Good afternoon. Not like I need a microphone. Anyway, good afternoon, everybody. Tony Collins, one of the co-chairs, and President of Clarkson University, Gary Douglas, President of the North Country Chamber of Commerce, the other co-chair. I wanted to welcome everybody, and certainly our supporters and volunteers that really make the entire process possible and work as effectively as it has. With that, I'd like to turn it over to the Secretary of State, Susan Perales. Susan?
Tony, thank you very much. Working appropriately?
They warm up after a while,
okay.
Like us.
So I'd like to welcome everyone on behalf of our Strategic Implementation Assessment Team. Before I introduce each one of them, I'm compelled to recognize that the man who's driven this entire regional economic concept, our Lieutenant Governor, is in the room, and Bob will do a sort of wave. I also want to welcome one of the guys who is most involved in the work we're doing and is going to be very involved in helping us with making these decisions is Kenneth Adams, the President and CEO of the Empire State Development Corporation. Ken will be here. And now to the actual team. New York State Agricultural Commissioner Darrell Overton. Office of General Services Commissioner Roanne Esteve. Environmental Facilities Corporation President and CEO Matt Driscoll. And Tax and Finance Commissioner Tom Maddox. It is really a pleasure to be serving with these distinguished colleagues and to learn about the tremendous work that you folks have done over the past year. This tour was extraordinarily impressive. I, for one, who ride the subway every day, got a particular kick out of it, seeing how these subway cars are actually made. But you guys have done a terrific job. I really enjoyed the earlier part of the discussion, in which you had some of the local folks explain what they have been doing and their successes. Before I start, I want officially to thank Anthony Collins, the President of Clarkson University, and Gary Douglas, who's the President of the North Country Chamber of Commerce. You guys have outdone yourselves. I'm so very pleased with the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
After Governor Cuomo created the Regional Economic Development Council last year, you pulled your community together, created a 5-year strategic regional economic development plan for the North Country. Last year, we awarded $785 million for economic and community development projects, consistent with each one of the region's plans. This year, you have been implementing your strategic plan, and we're here to learn about that progress. What we learned today will help us to distribute 5 Best Implementation Awards of $25 million each. These funds will provide enhanced funding for priority projects based on the progress you have made in implementing last year's strategic plan. I understand that you have about a half hour to tell us about the progress you've made. I'm looking forward to hearing about the capital projects funded through the CFA last year and about the transformational initiatives that you are undertaking in the North Country. After you tell us about the implementation of your plan, we will have 30 minutes to ask questions and be sure we understand your successes and your challenges. Through all of this, keep in mind that we're going to be evaluating you as it relates to strategy updates, implementing the strategic plan, leveraging resources, advancing priority projects, measuring performance, and engaging the public and involving stakeholders. Now I'll turn it over to Tony and Gary, and thank you both. Let's proceed.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you for being part of this process, and we look forward to telling you what we've been up to over the last several months.
This is a technical problem.
Last year, we titled our plan and our presentation Transformational. And it consisted of our recommendations, our decisions. It's remarkable we were allowed to make decisions, as we noted this morning, about strategies and projects that would help to transform the economic future of the North Country. It was multifaceted. It was, as noted, the first ever such plan ever done for this 7-county region. And we remain grateful that the governor gave us the opportunity to come together for the very first time as a region. This year, we're calling our document Delivering. And we feel very strongly that, as you have begun to see and will now see further, that we are, in fact, delivering on the promise inherent in the transformational strategies and projects we put forward. To deliver an opening thought that guides and defines our efforts, I'd like to, it's my great pleasure, in fact, to introduce an Adirondack enthusiast, former Governor and former President Theodore Roosevelt.
I would like to say one thing, and that is to say, I don't think I need it. Thomas Edison gave me one of these. I was the first one to be given electro, whatever. Do what you can with what you have where you are, which I think is perfect.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You're more than welcome.
Theodore Roosevelt was, in fact, a great enthusiast of the Adirondacks. He, under tragic circumstances, of course, became president while in the Adirondacks and in the North Country. And we do take very seriously that particular quote, which is really his estimation of how you achieve success. Where we are, a vast, diverse region, the largest of the 10. As those of you who heard us talk about this last year, I won't spend as much time doing that, but it's important to understand just geographically what a vast region we are. No metro center, small community, 6 million acre Adirondack Park in the center with the small micropolitan cities around the edge. No single kind of overwhelming sector that dominates the economy. Instead, a very, very diverse set of gems throughout the region. Required a different approach in our plan, and therefore required a different approach in terms of the diversity and multiplicity of projects and strategies that we are carrying on. That's where we are. What we have is that diversity in those gems, and also what we now have is a plan. Doing what we can, as the President says, is one thing that we can change, and that has changed in the last several months. We began with a great capacity for transformation, a great capacity to get things done, a great determination, a great deal of ability out of necessity to do things on our own even more frequently than many other areas of the state had to do through the years, and that continues to serve us well. What we can now do, however, are the remarkable things that the power of partnership makes possible. Coming together to achieve things through a whole that is far more powerful than any of us were separately as a series of parts. We are now, in fact, punching above our weight. And if the North Country punches at its weight, we lose every time, right, Darrell? But we have to come together to punch above our weight, and the governor, through this process, is allowing us to do that in a remarkable way. I'm not going to read the vision statement. You've all seen it. It's in the printed copy in front of you. I just want to point out that this was a product of our work last year that we were very proud of. We thought it really captured the diversity of this region, but also played up the interconnectivity between those various elements of our diversity. We have reaffirmed this vision statement, and I think you will continue to find that all of our strategies and all of our projects link back directly to an element of this vision. That means we've taken the process seriously. That means we didn't just come up with a vision statement, oh, well, that's done, now let's figure out what we wanted to do. The vision statement was driven by our assessment last year of what our challenges and opportunities were. It continues to be valid, and it continues to have direct linkage with what we're proposing for the coming year. The promise, as I noted last year, was transformational. Strategies and outcomes matched to the unique characteristics, scale, and diversity of the North Country. We have 14 priority projects this year and dozens of supporting CFA projects of a scale and character to fit our region. Yes, there are a few large ones like Bombardier, but most of them are very small scale, and our thanks again to the governor for being allowed to do transformational projects of a small scale that under the old paradigm, I think the reaction generally was, well, that's so small it couldn't possibly be important enough to pay attention to. When up here, because of the characteristics of this region, small can actually be very big. And actually anywhere in the state, sometimes the right kinds of small investments can in fact have a very big return. We said we would have no big bang. We're not going to have global foundries open up in the middle of the Adirondack Park, but we promised that we had before you last year a series of firecrackers that would ignite across the North Country. And as you saw in the tour this morning, in the presentation, and we'll continue to see, those firecrackers are igniting, they are going off, they are drawing attention, and they are having an impact. From plan to progress, 14 priority projects, 12 are fully under contract and proceeding, 2 are being finalized, and we have full confidence will proceed. So we have no failure in terms of delivering on the utilization of the funding awarded for our priority projects. Plus, we were very unexpectedly, but we were happy about it, awarded a very large allotment of IDA bonding authority for some yet-to-be-identified project in the North Country if we could use it. We ended up using almost all of it for the Re-Energy project, which is an amazing project that is part of what you have in front of you. I think Ken would confirm it's one of the larger IDA commitments made in the last year anywhere in the state. And we made it happen here in the North Country. You gave us the assets. We put it to good use above and beyond what we propose to do with our priority projects. It shows our capacity for success, our capacity to deliver. And then on our non-priority CFA projects, we had a total of 60. All but 2 are fully moving forward. One of those was simply withdrawn and has reapplied this year, and only one small project was unable to proceed. So we think that, again, is a remarkable record of success in delivering on your commitment to us. We committed to follow through, and we have. We also remain intent, and we expressed this over and over last year, that we will not be, and insist on not being, all about projects. The projects are not the end in themselves. The projects are one tool of many potential tools to carry out strategies. And so we have continued to take great pains to pay attention to the strategies. The project is implementing actions towards some of those strategies, but we have done a great deal of work through the council beyond the projects, beyond the priority projects, beyond the CFAs, on other funding sources, on federal issues and funding. Talk about border projects and border fluidity, for example. We've worked very closely with our federal friends to address that. Nothing to do with state funding, but a priority. We didn't abandon it or pay less attention to it because it wasn't, quote unquote, a project. We will leave no strategy behind, whether or not it happens to have a priority project attached to it. And I think you'll see that to some degree in the presentation, and we'd be happy to tell you more about that. Delivering, a few things we wanted to point out. We have continued to have a very strong commitment to public participation. We once again did 7 public forums, plus public sessions at our council meetings, plus speaking engagements and media interviews and other outreach, as much as we did the first time around when there was that engagement to help create a plan. We wanted to get out and explain what we were doing and get further input. The input was different this time because it wasn't about creating a plan from whole cloth, but it was still valuable. A few examples that we reflected in our thinking and in what we submitted for this year. We heard repeatedly about the need for water and sewer projects, and yet we all know there's a dearth of resources available to address the immense need, particularly with small, economically distressed communities in areas like the North Country who simply don't have the tax base to do investments that they need to upgrade their facilities. We reflected that in what we believe is a creative approach to one of our proposed projects for next year, but also in a determination to continue to advocate for ways that we can bring more assistance to bear to help address that need. We saw a definite affirmation to the importance of doing projects that provide opportunities for agricultural sector to add value to their production. Several of our projects this year put particular emphasis on that. We had a couple last year. We have even more this year, and that partly is in response to what we heard across the region, as well as arts and culture and broadband. Those are both reaffirmed at several of the sessions and are reflected in what we're proposing. And then we did have information on specific projects, some of which we encouraged to come forward with more info, and which in a few cases became priority projects that we first came in contact with through those public participation sessions. An example is the Wild Walk proposal at the Wild Center in Tupper Lake, which you'll see a bit more about. Every one of our 20-plus working groups was kept active and continues to be active, updating the strategies and helping with implementation. We have used them as a key part on the ground, out front, of helping with implementation. If they're from that community, if the project is in their sector, there have been many cases where they can be able to help solve problems, make contacts, build dialogue, help us move the project across the finish line. Plus, we created a new workforce development group and a new economic development liaison group, which is through the North Country Alliance here, an organization of all of the on-the-ground economic developers across the 7 counties. They have helped us develop a growing and solid pipeline of projects, looking out several years to start seeing on the horizon what we might be looking seriously at next year, perhaps, or a couple of years from now. And that has been an enhancement to our plan and our process carried out this year. And we had a few new elements added to the plan, including a section on healthcare strategy and a more consolidated workforce development strategy. On the healthcare front, I want to share with you something that we found remarkable. It's been a learning experience in the first year. I think we all tended, probably all the regions to a large degree, tended in the first instance, particularly in the time crunch we had last year in creating an initial plan, to focus your strategies around the things that there seemed to be some money to chase. And if there weren't particular agencies or funding streams in that CFA mix, it became easy to say, well, that's important, but it doesn't look like we can do anything about that, so let's not spend time putting that in the strategy. We decided we were wrong about that, because we have heard, particularly in this region, part of the response that the governor referred to here in the North Country to the importance of this process have been that sectors that weren't part of the original plan are still turning to the council and saying, we want your support, we want to be in the plan, we want to be able to reference this plan for our sectors and our projects, even though it has nothing to do with the CFA process or the funding process. And healthcare was one of those sectors. And so the plan process is being used, once again, in ways that are starting to morph well beyond the original notion that, oh, well, it's really about whatever those CFA funding streams are. No, it's becoming about more than that. And that's a very positive development. And some of our additions acknowledge that specifically. And most importantly, we continue to let the process we created last year work, including our project selection process. It's not a let's make a deal game. It's the criteria, it's the committees, the review, the process. It worked last year. We think it works this year as well. Stand back. Here come some of our firecrackers as I turn this over to Tony.
Thank you, Gary. This is just tremendously exciting to be able to share with you the success of virtually all of our projects. I'm going to go quickly, bear with me, and I hope it energizes you for what we see as the future. Bombardier, you walked in there. That plant was empty 2 years ago. It's now resurrected and delivering not just to subways in New York City, but around the country. The Trudeau Institute, that can literally anchor not just a research facility in the middle of the Adirondacks, but a biotech industry. Very, very exciting. One of the things that's gone a little unnoticed and unsaid here is the governor leans on us, the council, to provide input into decisions that Albany has to make. And we really greatly appreciate that. And so the Pfizer facility, they came to us and said, here's a research facility worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's going to go on the chopping block. Can you get involved? We said, of course we can. And so the region is now looking to repurpose the Pfizer research facility in Chazy. keeping Kinney Drugs as a distribution centre. The number of jobs, 350 jobs retained simply for peanuts, in a sense, for expanding the distribution, the water distribution and the sewer system. Lions Falls, you heard this morning. The wonderful part again about this process is that we know what is going to happen about economic development, not just this year, but next year and the year after. And we develop a plan, we stick to the plan, and we see a large-scale project all the way through from early stages to finalization. Building our logistics prowess with new access to the Ogdensburg port. We were able to repurpose. They had a hiccup in a rail line that had to be moved to a railroad access. They hadn't worked out that the turbine blades coming through the port couldn't make it by rail, but they could by road. We were able to quickly repurpose. Sometimes in the past, funding would be lost from the region and be repurposed into another part of the state. We've got literally the authority to repurpose, and that's huge. It gives us confidence. Seeing our vision, seeing progress, nurturing entrepreneurs. We've got over 1.1 million in micro-enterprise investments in about 5 different communities. The tourism. By the way, we see tourism, including into the Adirondack, as a fishing lure that attracts people that we would then eventually like to retain in the area. And so our famous saying now that I've actually heard the governor utter, and that is, make your front porch your front office. And so tourism is not just an industry by itself, but it helps provide infrastructure. We have to build that to attract tourists, and then many of those tourists will stay and relocate to the region. So some of the infrastructure, a hotel in Clayton, and what was curious, in one of our regional meetings in Plattsburgh, they were talking about tourism in this region, and literally in a question and answer session we suggested, why not connect across the North Country? The War of 1812 wasn't just in Plattsburgh, and so the light bulb went on, and we're seeing this regional connection to tourism. The region's first propagated agricultural revolution, region's first USDA, you've heard about this. For $30,000, we're able to provide USDA certified poultry that all the high institutions of higher education were not allowed to purchase it. We've now got access to that locally, adding value, purchasing locally. A pipeline, natural gas pipeline, that actually allowed, now it's a yogurt producing facility, actually allowed that facility to lower their costs to the point where they're able to retain about 100 jobs in Fraser Falls nearby. One of the really interesting aspects of this, we keep going back to the idea that this is a large geographic region with a sparse population. I shouldn't tell you this, but I think it works in our favor, because we actually, with a little effort in terms of driving and moving around, we can actually get to know everybody. For the first time ever, higher education and research development, a consortium, so the 9 institutions of higher education all at the same table, led by SciTech. Bill Murray convenes that group, and we've added the 2 research facilities into the mix. They are working together in an unprecedented way. It would never have happened without this activity. North Country STEM network, we actually host at Clarkson for that network, but in terms of workforce development, of course we've got to do everything possible to get kids into STEM activities and then move them through the whole process. We're now partnered together with the state. Let me just add a couple of other things. I really believe, I mentioned this morning to the governor in our other session, that the self-confidence that the region has now developed, it's confident enough to look to the other regions. And I firmly believe the next step is to start to connect to the other regions. And just 2 harbingers of that activity. Central New York, I think many of you know, is looking at developing a VC fund, a venture capital fund for investing in many of, we would love to have them. We have a pipeline of 130 incorporated activities, companies potentially coming out of Clarkson and the surrounding area. We need venture funding for that. Central New York is developing a venture fund. We're partnering with them. That's a simple way of reaching across. Advanced manufacturing. That's high on the list. So ourselves, RIT, SUNY IT, the Solar Energy Consortium, Mid-Hudson, forming a group together. We've got the confidence to step out and not feel exploited now as a region. We're willing to give and share our riches with other regions in a very productive way. So I think that's something to look forward to. Creating the greenest economy, RENergy, of the Black River plant, a biomass facility that will provide power to the entire Fort Drum base. Who would have thought we couldn't have done it without the bond issue? So $30 million for RENergy. Secured we're actually now in the process, a USDA grant, by the way, for biomass, growing willow trees. Clean Energy Conference. I've never been to a conference in the North Country where they had to shut the doors and turn potential attendees away. That occurred because of the spirit in the region of wanting to be the greenest region in the state. Launch a pivotal Clean to Green. Whilst one county received the award, all 7 counties are now developing a strategic plan. So instead of asking the state for money to subsidise heating costs, let's use that money and replace the windows so you don't lose the heat out the windows and you don't have to subsidise heating. That's the kind of thinking. Broadening and deepening our connection to Canada. This is Mr. Canadian Connection sitting next to me. And I think we've got a glimpse of that when you think of Nova Bus coming across the border, when you think of Bombardier coming across the border, when you hear the story about the number of, 80% of the people that use the Plattsburgh Air Terminal come from Canada. What a brilliant idea, right, to bring them across the border and then they use those flights and bring their spending money with them. That's enough for that one. You can carry on that. Defense, really, it was uplifting. You could see the relief on the Jefferson County faces when they understood for the first time the region would stand shoulder to shoulder with them if there was ever another BRAC closing that threatened Fort Drum. Not just did the region want to stand with them in case that happened, but they were prepared regionally to say this has got to be a high priority. Now, it's a huge, I think $1.8 billion a year comes in because of Fort Drum. But the region said, okay, we get it. That's anchoring the western part of our region. Let's get behind them and provide the housing, which is only the right thing to do for our servicemen and women, but provide the housing that ensures the base will pass any kind of BRAC closing with shining star. I lost my word there. Oh well. So defense, Adirondack, the CFA, the Adirondack partnership. For the first time, the Adirondacks, I hear it time and again, the Adirondacks, what used to be a contentious area has become a collaborative area. They've done a wonderful visioning exercise, and now we're seeing broadband. I mean, that's been at the basis of it. The region recognizes they can actually get assets. Rail is coming back, and then people have said to me this morning on the tour, why would we be worried about refurbishing the Strand Theatre? People want a quality of life. If you're going to hire professionals to come here, doctors, or it's the case I'll use, they've got plenty of options these days. You've got to have a quality of life, and so the Strand Theatre, it's all hand-in-glove, chicken and egg strategy. And again, the region understands that, and so these are the small firecrackers that we've been using. Thank you.
Delivering continued. A quick look at our next round of firecrackers, our 2013 projects that we have submitted as part of this year's competition. And I'll run through them quickly, and then we'd be happy to try to discuss any of them if you'd like to come back around. As I noted, we're putting even more emphasis on agriculture this year, particularly on value added and access to our region's own projects. 3 of our priority projects in this sector, Adirondack Meat Company in Ticonderoga. Really the next step in the mobile processing facility for poultry is to have a major place where the larger livestock, beef cattle and so on, can be taken, and we can retain and use more of our meat production and potential meat production here in the North Country to the benefit of our farmers. DANK, Value Added Agriculture Program, and the North Country Regional Food Hub. In tourism and recreation, the emphasis continues to be on development. Certainly we need support in marketing in other areas as well, but we particularly need, through the regional council process, to continue to find opportunities to develop the facilities, attractions, accommodations, etc., that can actually attract and spread the impact of tourism. Although we love them going to Lake Placid, we also want them going to Tupper Lake and Scroon Lake and the Thousand Islands and other places that don't all have necessarily the facilities to accommodate and get the most value out of that visitor. so that it's not just a stop in the town and then off, but maybe a stayover in the town because there's the kind of accommodations there. The Community Transformation Tourism Fund is a loan program specifically structured for those kinds of investments. We had put this forward as a priority project last year. It was not funded. We obtained some advice, had some discussions with the state. We believe it's been restructured now in a way that we hope can move forward this year. The Wild Center in Tupper Lake, an incredible story. The Wild Walk will be an incredible new asset, taking that major attraction to another level. The Adirondack Park Recreation Web Portal is an Adirondack Park-wide 3-region project, another example of our crossing over the regions in order to do things in a more logical way. Recycled recreation and the lacrosse field of dreams. Jim knows well about this, but we have a site in North Elba, which is a former landfill, which is being proposed to create recreational and sporting fields that will, in particular, help the very unique sports-oriented part of the equation in the Lake Placid area, which is really unique in the state of New York. Adirondack Mountain Club Heart Lake Program Center and the Racket River Blue Way Trail Corridor, which is a network of small investments over a long ways of the Racket River that will help to coalesce that as an even more powerful attraction for paddling and fishing and other activities. Oh, this came off a little dark. Sorry about that. Broadband, you know about the Hamilton County Broadband Project and how important it is. Phase 2 is proposed for this year. We always envision that as being a multi-year endeavor, as well as a second phase for Long Lake, the Long Lake Next Generation Broadband. I note we also have several other broadband projects that came in through the initial CFA process, or now in recent days have come in through the Connect New York process that we also embrace and support. We'd love to see them all funded. They're all good, but we certainly hope to see a significant number of them funded this year. Defense, we need to continue to meet that critical housing need, which is such a component for the future retention and the maximization of future value from Fort Drum. And so this year, 2 housing projects have been identified as priority projects. Our understanding is that if we can carry out both of these on top of the ones that are in process this year, we will be at a point of finally substantially addressing the long under-met need for decent, affordable housing for our military families, as well as the concurrent relief of the housing market in that area for other residents who are now having to compete with those military families for an inadequate supply of housing. Strategic clusters, international paper, natural gas conversion. We have been working outside of the funding process with Congressman Owens, with Senator Little, with Teresa Sayward, with the governor's office, and others to facilitate a plan that we think is now on track to get natural gas to international paper in Ticonderoga from Vermont. That particular part of the project is probably not going to require any state investment, which is a good thing. But know that we're involved because it's important. We're not just involving ourselves in the things where it's a grant. We're involving ourselves in the things that achieve our strategies and our mission. But there's an element that will require state support, which is the cost of converting the industrial processes and boilers in the plant to gas. And that is a priority project this year. Current applications expansion in Watertown and the next phase of the Lion Falls Mill site, which you heard about this morning. Renewable energy, we have 3 projects, Curran Renewables, Cape Vincent Green Energy Willow Farm, and a wood pellet boiler system for the Adirondack Museum. As you'll see with some of these, they cross over some of our strategies and sectors. I mean, Adirondack Museum, you could call helping them be more efficient, also supporting one of our major tourism attractions, for example. So we particularly put value on finding projects that bring some value to 2 or more of our strategies, and a number of these do that. And the community development front, phase 2 and final phase of the Strand restoration. That was a 2-step process. You saw the remarkable work underway. We need 1 more shot this year. That'll be open next summer. We can get it fully equipped and maximize its impact. And then, as noted, we heard about the incredible need around the region for municipal water and wastewater projects, many of them in support of economic development. We had several come in through the CFA process. Given the scant funding in the pipeline, we had difficulty picking one. But we see an opportunity with your assistance of funding a support fund in an amount that we propose that we believe will allow us to go back, look at all of those that were submitted in the CFA process, and only those, not reopening it, apply our priority project criteria, and probably assist 2 to maybe as many as 4 of those to go forward, without feeling that we need to just kind of maybe pick one of them to be a priority project when it's a broader priority than that. So that's the approach we took to that, as a consolidated priority project, but one that would actually have the effect of maybe doing 2 or 3 or 4 communities around the region. We also went on, again in that spirit of it not being just about the projects, of identifying a number of continuing regional priorities and other regional priorities. Some of these are major pipeline opportunities, or we have reason to believe projects may emerge in the next year but weren't ready yet. But we want those placeholders, so we've told you now that confidentially we believe in some of these cases something is going to emerge, and we're going to be looking to work with Ken and his people to respond to some of those, and already have some confidential discussions about some of them. Others are a reflection that things like Trudeau are in play, changes are underway. We simply are saying, State of New York, we have your attention. We need your high-level attention to continue. And that's what we're saying by saying it's a continuing priority. So it doesn't even necessarily have to be, again, about funding. It's about it being a priority and therefore deserving that level of attention. Some of them will be about advocating for resources, maybe outside of state resources, outside of the CFA process, potentially within the budget process, as in the case of the Whiteface Mountain Highway, which we think ought to be funded within the budget next year. And we have voted to support that. Plattsburgh International Airport, again, most of our effort is going to be to get federal funds, but the region is saying we're behind that. And by the way, going forward, there undoubtedly will be some times when the state can be of assistance as well. And then we've got one more firecracker today. And just to show that we are very serious about public input, and it never ends. Public participation continued on September 23rd in the Adirondacks when a visitor recommended the following: a joint initiative by the North Country Regional Council and the Adirondack Regional Tourism Council to draw more downstaters to the magnificent Adirondacks. Now I'm going to turn this over to the chair of our Tourism Development Committee, Jim McKenna. We have done our homework, and we presented the governor this morning with that completed homework, and we're now happy to present it to you.
Thank you, Gary. What I'm going to do, though, is let's take a quick look at what the governor did this past year in purchase of new land in the Adirondacks, just to give you a feel of it. Go ahead. It's a little bit dark in here, but that's sort of coming through Indian Pass, and what we're looking at down on is some of that fixed prime purchase. And, you know, this is magnificent. I mean, where else in the Northeast can you see anything like this? You know, the Adirondack Park, for those not totally familiar, there's Boy's Pond, which we're talking about, one of the ponds purchased, or the area purchased. You know, the Adirondack Park is the largest state park in the lower 48 states. And this purchase is very significant long-term for us. Some people are questioning it a little bit, but if we look 50, 100 years down the road, this is going to really stick out. Indian River and Hudson River, where they split, this is all part of the fixed prime purchase right here. You know, the governor was there, and he was motivated that day. In fact, I saw him talking today to someone, talking about it, and I wasn't there, but he was going, and I got a brook trout. Anybody there? I don't know. But don't tell my Oh, is that big? I thought it was bigger. But anyway, you know, I think he was quite motivated on this, and when you look at this, and you see that property, and, you know, I think he was very smart in saying that even our state doesn't recognize what we have in the Adirondacks, in the North Country. And, I know anybody said a Daily News article yesterday. There was one talking about tourism, and the governor was saying, what we've got to do is we've got to let the people in our state know what our state has, and we have to get them to take advantage of what the state has. And when he's up here in the Adirondacks, the North Country, he talks very specifically about exposing the rest of the state to what we have and get that flow of money coming up here, because that will lead to the investment that you were talking about there. So he challenged us to come up with an event, and paddling event, and he's talked about from Lake Huron in the Clouds, which is off on Mount Marcy, and that's the source of the Hudson River. And he made the connection from the Lake Huron in the Clouds, traveling south all through New York State, past Albany, down into the metropolitan area. And, utilizing that connection to expose the greater Manhattan area, the greater New York City ADI. So we took that concept and we expanded a little bit. And what we're just going to put in front of all you is we're calling it the Greater Adirondack Park Paddling Challenge. And to try to summarize it quite quickly, what we're doing is we've actually taken the idea and expanded a little bit. We're looking over the entire, not only the Adirondack Park, but we've broadened it to the North Country region, because we haven't confirmed this yet, but we think that there's more paddling opportunities in the North Country of New York State than any other state in the lower 48. So we're going to confirm that. But the opportunities are there. Not only do we have the Hudson, but we have the Grass River, the Black River, the Racket River, on and on. We have the Fulton chain of lakes, the Saranac chain of lakes, Lake Ontario, Lake Champlain. The paddling opportunities are enormous. So what we've come up with is that we're going to identify about 35 routes, or maybe more, maybe less. And they're going to be geared in a way that they're for beginners, they're for experienced paddlers, and they're for competitive paddlers. And we're going to come up with a system that's going to be an electronic system where people have to sort of check in at the beginning of the route with their handheld. And they're going to take the route, and then they have to check out at the end of it with their handheld. And maybe that'll end up being, as this is developing, they'll have to upload it to their Facebook page, or they'll have to Twitter to their friends what they've just accomplished. And, we're going to gear it in a way that, if they accomplish all 35 of these routes, they're going to get awarded something. In fact, there's one university in Potsdam that has said the first applicant that's qualified to be a student, and if they do the first one to complete the 35 routes, what will happen, Tony? Free tuition.
Oh my God.
So that's the type of event we're developing. And what we're going to do is spend the next 6 to 8 months finalizing the program. And then we're going to start really putting it together. When I finalize the program, it's really the routes, how it'll actually work, who will be responsible for it. We work closely with both the Adirondack Regional Tourism Council and the Thousand Islands Seaway Council as well. They're fully involved in it. And we're going to get to a point early next year. Well, really, we're going to kick it off, and I mentioned this to the governor today. We're fortunate enough, the Outdoor Writers of America are having their annual conference in the Adirondacks this year. We've already got them committed to taking a tour of the land purchase. And at that point, we're going to be ready to talk to them about this event, and we hope that the governor or some of the governor's representatives can come up and join us. And we're going to kick it off initially at that time. That's our plan. And then we carry it through to next year, where we do a real specific marketing plan. Anybody been seeing the I Love New York marketing TV campaigns are out there? You know how that music sort of grabs you in? Well, we're going to give it that same theme. We're going to give it, the campaign's going to be that, but it's going to be more social related as well. So there's going to be a connection there, so we get people motivated to do it. And it's going to be a 2-year program. So the actual campaign and events will go 14 and 15, but we feel by the end of that, not only will we expose the New York metropolitan area to the paddling opportunities in the Adirondacks and North Country, but we're going to target the other markets that are close in, which would be Montreal, Canada area, Ottawa, certainly if you go down Syracuse or Rochester, certainly the Utica, Rome area, and Albany area, the New York metropolitan will be the targets, because we feel that that's going to allow, as Tony was saying earlier, that's going to give us the exposure with the quality of life benefits that we have that will entice more investment to come to the region. So we would like to take credit for that idea, but that was actually the governor's. So thank you very much, and we really look forward to implementing that program.
We do listen. Give us a challenge, and we will deliver. It's what we've been doing, and I think this was actually a perfect example. And it is an exciting opportunity to really do something to build the tourism part of the economy up here, with the afterplay, as has been mentioned, that comes with getting those folks from downstate to visit the Adirondacks and then potentially become residents to go to school here or make investments here. I'm not going to dwell on this slide or read it verbatim. It's in what's in front of you, but we want you to know that we are thinking about the process and the basics of how we will proceed going forward, and we've outlined a number of key commitments here as to how we will continue to proceed as a council, some of the ethics and approaches that will continue to be the underpinnings of our work. And with that, for some closing words, I'd like to call again on our good friend and special guest, President Roosevelt. Mr. President.
Thank you very much. As former governor of New York State, I said time and time again that North Country is indeed the crown jewel of New York State, and we should not shirk our duties to continue to have the North Country prosper. And with that I mean take action, seize the moment, and men should not become anything but an oyster. With that I'll say thank you very much, and the best to you all.
Thank you all very, very much for what is undoubtedly a challenging presentation. And Mr. President, I want to thank you as well.
We've had a congressman and a president.
I know. It's just a thought, knowing how competitive our governor is. You ought to include one major race that people want to come to participate every year. Big competition. I think that's something that would turn the governor on. But given that the president reminded us, do what you can with what you got where you are, I'm going to give you a softball. The reality is that you guys are very close to Canada, metropolis around Montreal. And I know you've given us some examples of what you're doing already, but I can't help but believe that there's even more that can be done given your unique place in our state. So with that, maybe you can tell us what else you've been thinking about in terms of the connection to Canada.
Yeah, the key strategy that underpins all of our Canadian opportunities, we refer to as border fluidity. If you can't get here from there, then we're not Montreal as a suburb, we're not connected to Ontario. And so we will continue to put a great deal of stress on border facilities, border operations, the general fluidity of both cars, trucks, and also trains at the border. The more efficient that movement is, the more connected we are, and the easier it is for a Canadian company to make an investment here. Understand, I've been doing this at the Chamber for 20 years. We estimate just here in the immediate Plattsburgh area, and then this multiplies across the region, but just in the immediate backyard here, more than 180 Canadian-based companies, ranging from small to companies like Bombardier. I couldn't fill a hand of cases where that was a relocation of jobs. It is a matter of growth within the U.S. market by Canadian companies taking advantage of NAFTA or for other circumstances depending on the sector. If we can make the border as efficient and easy and non-intimidating as possible for their personnel and supply movements back and forth, then when they make that decision that that next part of their growth is going to be something on the U.S. side of the border, we want to make it easy for them to think, well, it's not going to be in North Carolina or Pennsylvania or Texas, unless, as is sometimes the case, there's an overriding reason to be next to a major customer or something. But if that's not the case, to be able to say, we got both. You're in the U.S., but you may as well be home in Canada, too. You can visit your operation for lunch. You don't have to delegate as much of your management authority because you're close by. You can use some of your same suppliers and vendors and professional services, which you wouldn't be able to do in Charlotte, North Carolina. So that will continue to be key. We got this year 4 of our border facility and policy priorities, thanks to Congressman Owens and our 2 U.S. senators. directly into the Beyond the Border agreement that the President and Prime Minister announced last December, prioritizing those. Border traffic is up 16% this year into the North Country, but dwell time, the time spent per vehicle at the booth, is down. And that is because of aggressive day-in, day-out advocacy and monitoring between our organization and others, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection, Canadian Customs, and so on. But then beyond that, we definitely need, I think over the next couple of years, and we will, get out there again more actively to kind of be in their face, in their lap, on their doorstep, to tell our story. Frankly, there's been a couple of years where not much of anybody's making an awful lot of investment anywhere. So it goes up and down. We had real strong cycles when we had lots of Canadian companies investing, and then it goes down for a while. We've been in a trough for a couple of years. We continue to put the building blocks in place, the facilities, the efficiencies at the border, et cetera, so that we're ready. I think now we can again reopen that investment spigot, and we're going to do so. I'm spending all day tomorrow leading a Doing Business in the U.S. seminar being hosted by the Montreal Board of Trade, for example, for 200 Quebec-based companies.
Just add maybe some specifics to that. One of our projects in the water and sewer project is actually around the Thousand Island Bridge area. If we're able to do that, that will actually develop, that there is a Canadian connection to that development. One of the projects that we're able to repurpose, and we can't discuss it, it's confidential, is a Canadian company bringing their entire manufacturing operation into the U.S., into one of our border towns, I'll call it. We're seeing at Clarkson a strong desire. People want to, Canadian companies want to locate. So we're actually looking across the top of our region on the examples of the experience that Gary's had in Plattsburgh. We're seeing companies that want to come, particularly software companies. Ottawa is very rich in software, early development companies, and bring them down. There's a natural code. We're talking to one company right now to relocate into our incubator on Clarkson's campus because they want to be in the U.S. and because they want access, the easiest way for access to the U.S. market, and they've got a workforce right there. So all along the border, again, it's not a massive, it's our style and approach is one at a time, relatively small, but working at it continuously. And so I would say, I've given you two other border crossings, middle of the region, western end of the region, to match what they're doing here. And we're learning from that experience.
The subtle difference which we get and we work at day in and day out is that the New York-Quebec, New York-Ontario relationship is not a trading relationship. We have a trading relationship with Bulgaria. It's not about the boxes and the values going back and forth now. We are integrated economic regions, really, within which there's a border that's an inconvenience we have to watch and manage, but doesn't define regionality anymore. And particularly,
rating how all the economic development regions have done. In an effort to try to do that, knowing that the plans are fluid, are there issues, concerns, shortfalls in the original plan that you recognize and address in the plan going forward?
Okay. Well, we did, as I mentioned in the presentation, we did go back and put a few things in, most particularly healthcare, which we had wrongly decided, well, the health programs aren't in the CFA process, so we won't spend time on that. So we have gone back and I think made our plan even more holistic in that sense. We did consolidate our workforce development. Again, the first time around, we had workforce strategies in there. They were all over the plan, but they were all over the plan. Instead of them being kind of a consolidated set of strategies, we had them be in relationship to other sectors. So in aerospace and transportation equipment, there were a couple of workforce strategies specific to that. And that was okay, but we went back now and did a more holistic approach to pull that together and include some of the things like the STEM network and other things that aren't necessarily so sectoral in their orientation. So that certainly. There are certainly some resource challenges that you can address, but we can all continue to advocate for. We need somehow over time more resources for water and sewer as part of the scenario. I don't know how that happens, but it's critical. And we need some more resources into this process. I'm sure you're hearing this from all the regions for workforce development. There really is very little.
We have something in the center of the region, the associated colleges of St. Lawrence Valley, and that is Clarkson, St. Lawrence, SUNY Canton, SUNY Potsdam. We've had a history of 30 years of cooperating together. We're right now very actively discussing bringing the other institutions of higher education in as affiliate members, adding to that SciTech, so that SciTech can inform the institutions of higher education exactly what the workforce needs long-term are. I don't think there's an area in the country, a region in the country, a state, where you have a free two-way exchange between higher education and workforce as closely coupled and connected as that. So that if we're going to do economic development, what's the point of doubling the size of Bombardier if there's not a workforce that can meet those needs? And so together we need to, that is industry through SciTech and higher education need to couple their thinking so that as you look into the out years, there's a purpose. And so I think that's going to be a first and would not have happened if we didn't have this regional council and that activity. One thing I'm noticing as a gap is, rightly I said before, the governor is challenging us and saying, give us your input on this problem or that problem. Sometimes I want to say, how about helping me with my problems? No, I didn't say that. But that how the regional council is going to deal with, I'll call them thorny issues, and I'm sure other regions have got some thorny issues. I don't think we've yet really effectively addressed a way to deal with thorny issues that I think we need to be transparent about, we need to be inclusive about, we need to be open, look for the right kinds of solutions so that we can give the right advice back to the government. I think it's fantastic that we're being asked locally to comment on local issues. We need, I think, to improve our process, the council process, of how to deal with that. I think that's one that I would highlight going forward.
I think we need to be concerned about, so far so good, but concerned about the sustainability of all this too. There's an incredible amount of demand on the volunteers who are part of this process. And I was amazed how much they did the first year. I'm amazed that they did just as much the second year, but I worry about the sustainability of that going forward. I don't know what the answer is, but it's something that certainly before the 5-year conclusion of the first 5-year phase of this project, we need to have some serious conversations about whether there may need to be some different approaches to things like, for example,
it was quite easy to identify gaps in water and sewer that were having a dramatic negative impact on economic development. So they're the ones that we'll be funding. I hate to say this, I mean, so many communities need it, but it's really just for I won't say run-of-the-mill, if you get my drift, it's for normal wear and tear on normal infrastructure, not so much of a direct impact on economic development. So that's why we think we can be very effective with this fund.
President Driscoll.
Thank you. Let me begin by thanking you for your presentation. That felt very good. And I wanted to acknowledge the folks that made presentations to us this morning, as well as the tour. I thought it was great examples of what's going on here in the region. I very much appreciate that. On behalf of my colleagues from the state as well, I want to thank you for lunch. That was very kind of you. And if we were scoring desserts, you'd be number one. Having said that,
I thought that was a criteria.
I'm interested in the state's made a sizable investment, of course, in the plan. So I'm interested in how you've been leveraging those resources from the city. And then also the second part of that is in terms of metrics. How are you using those metrics, and how will those metrics be used going forward over the course of the next 3 years to provide tangible results from these projects?
Well, I have specific numbers on any of the priority projects if you'd like, but overall for the current year's priority projects in play, the 2011 priority projects, the leverage is 22 to 1. It was a very, very high leverage of other funds for the state dollars invested through our program. That includes, I might add, leveraging $1 billion in contracts for Bombardier, which would not be...
Gary, let me interject.
Yep.
What does it mean? Can you give us an example of how the investment we've made through the Regional Economic Council got perhaps private industry to come in and say, well, we're going now to invest our money in this project?
That's what I was asking.
Okay. In the case of Bombardier, they were at a decision point, certainly over the last few years. They had been through a pretty long trough in terms of work. Really running small projects through there. The workforce was down almost to a skeleton. They were struggling to keep it from going even lower in order to retain skills. Could they produce somewhere else? Do they simply become a smaller, leaner company and survive at a smaller level than what they had been at in the past? Or do they make this what they're now calling a center of excellence for rail production in North America? The show of support and prioritization by the state of New York through the efforts of the community of $2.5 million is leveraging about a $26 million direct capital investment in the major expansion, upwards of about 50% of their current size, of a facility that a couple of years ago was in difficulty and didn't necessarily have to become the growing facility it now is. Linked into all of that, to just kind of show the linkage of things, they were competing at that time for two major contracts, one with New York, one with the BART system in San Francisco, that together with all options are exercised, as they reasonably expect they will exceed $1 billion. They needed to be able, in order to effectively compete for those contracts, to show that they would be able to produce, which would require the expansion to be done, the expansion requiring confidence that the state and the community were behind it in various ways. It's all kind of a circle that comes back around, that investment of $2.5 million, leveraged in the first instance $26 million, but actually leveraged $1 billion plus more than that in terms of the contracts that wouldn't have been possible without the expansion, which wouldn't have been possible without the expression through the council. So I mean, I would express that as a particularly large example. On the smaller end, things like some of them are harder to quantify. What the end impact is going to be, you just know it's huge. Broadband, you know that's going to be transformational in places like the Adirondack. We can't quantify it. We probably go out and come up with some people who have. But you can't quantify maybe what the second and third generation impacts are going to be. Or the poultry processing, the value added to that of agriculture. It goes well beyond the leveraging of the initial investment and the jobs created directly by that particular venture. It is the service provided that's going to bring another whole layer and level of impact through all the farms in the area.
Housing around Fort Drum would be another example. Sometimes you think that $2 million on a $20 million project, well, gosh, they probably could have gone ahead without that. Well, no. By the time you include the pilot agreements and you include the $2 million, you add it all up, it actually allows for the project to move ahead. So that's where you get the huge leverage. When we ran these numbers last year, when we presented in Albany, we thought we were going to leverage about 7 to 1. And in fact, I remember, almost ashamedly now, that we made a point of those that were touting high leverage numbers, that in fact we said that, well, we'll let them go ahead. They don't need the money. You don't need to support them. We thought at 7 to 1 that was a pretty good deal. $1 to get 7 leverage. Well, it turns out that the impact of these projects without the $1 billion is 22 to 1 that we've documented. So because people get on board and want to make more of an investment when they can, and I'll go back to the confidence of seeing that a process is in place. We go back to the Lions Fall, so we can phase things in. So there's a continuing process that people are now confident of, and then you'll see private investors step in and get behind when the state makes a relatively small investment. We have the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question, Matt?
I will add just that this year our baseline estimate of leverage on our proposed 2012 priority project is 8.5 to 1.
Commissioner Maddox.
I think we're out of time, so I'll be brief and practice the answer.
Maybe.
Related to workforce development, the idea of having a fund, and your thoughts around infrastructure for water and sewage. If you think about workforce development, within the council you all discussed potentially treating education as infrastructure. And I'm curious as to how happy you are with the quality of secondary education now in
I say it's both, but I'm going to let Tony really get into that.
Yeah, well, I would say primary emphasis is on training those that are here and attracting and retaining those that come here. And so that's why we're all over the STEM initiative. That's all the way down to, and this is not a Clarkson activity. This is the herd activity, the higher education. We are all partners. We're all focused. And I go back to, I don't know of another region where you have higher education, all of us, which is one of our advantages, being a sparsely populated region, and SciTech, which is our MEP. Bill, what's MEP stand for?
Manufacturing Extension Partnership.
Bill, do you want to you want to give them a minute on our plan to incorporate STEM all the way to end up supporting manufacturing?
Exactly. On Friday we recognized National Manufacturing Day, and we had events here in Plattsburgh and in Potsdam and Watertown. So we brought together guidance counselors, technology teachers, and administrators at the secondary level to educate them on manufacturing, about all the job openings there are, all the quality job openings that offer benefits and the pay levels, and that they can't find the people to hire. Even up here, when you look at a 9% unemployment rate, but we don't have the skills match. And you're looking at percentages of 28%. Educators think that only 28% of the graduates are ready for the workforce. That's appalling. We need to work together to help them to bring science and technology alive, to get the kids interested at the middle school level and ramp them up, and they can stay local. They can see a path. It doesn't have to be a 4-year institution in California. They can see a path to a good career in their own city of Potsdam or elsewhere. So that's where we're trying to go with the STEM method.
Well, that's very helpful. I think we were trying to get a sense of how to trickle down to your country residents and what people here and what kind of needs they need.
So this weekend we have four young businesses, startup companies, going to Silicon Valley to pitch up and down, looking to bring funding from Silicon Valley back here. Now, we're actually doing it, obviously, primarily for the experience of going out there and understanding how to pitch to the Kleiner Perkins of the world. We're going into all the major companies. So it's one is an East Coast ski company, 6 different engineers, all different backgrounds with a ski design to the East Coast, a sophomore business that is, when you go into an arena, you take a photo of the QR sign and you have delivered to your seat in the arena your beverage or food of your choice, and it's already charged. There is St. Lawrence University, a technical device for a medical application, and the 4th one is an aeroponic growing system. That's a former undergraduate, now graduate student at Clarkson. So why aeroponics? If you grow plants in hydroponics, in water, you can only, the structural requirements are pretty intense and you can't go very high. If you have the roots in air and you miss them, really height becomes not a problem. And so if any of you fly over Brooklyn tonight landing, look down to all those flat roofs, and you could actually put an aeroponic system on each of those roofs and feed every person in the building below. So all 4 of those are pitching in Silicon Valley this afternoon. That's an attempt to bring back, these technologies are all grown right here in the North Country, and that's why we're looking to bring a venture fund. It's something that probably has to stretch across the region. But I hope that gives you a flavor for the driving force behind all of this.
One last very brief question for Commissioner Overkeen.
Yeah, the one last thing is, how are you dealing in the plan with MWBE?
I can address that. Being from the North Country, you'll understand that is particularly challenging for us up here. The sparseness of our population, the nature of our population. It is challenging to meet those requirements. We believe they're appropriate requirements. We support them. We believe in going out and trying to figure out how we do meet them. We believe and have been advocating that there are far more qualified businesses out there in the North Country that have never been certified. We got to get to them. We got to grow the pool, not complain that we can't do it because, there's not one of those in the North Country. We do need to be concerned as a region that we're looking to get these state dollars into the region, and then have maybe 23% of them go out the door to somebody in Long Island, like Long Island. But we prefer if it could stay with a qualified, certified business here if there's one available. Sometimes there aren't, or there aren't enough to be competitive. So we need to grow that pool. We think we can. Senator Little is doing some outreach programs to try to sign up some more people. I've expressed and would love to work with Empire State Development on this to come up with a strategy. And I think it's partly, yeah, you go out and you do workshops, and you'll get some people in. But it's got to be even more proactive than that. For example, we have the Mohawk Territory here in the North Country. Every one of those businesses ought to be qualified. If we can lure them in to get certified and see this as an opportunity and as a region, I'd love to have that money stay there instead of go out of the region. So we're very committed, but we've got to grow the pool.
The Secretary's going to allow me, I'm just going to promote the MWBE conference that Governor Cuomo is coming up October 25th, 26th, and 27th. If you could promote it among your members and in the North Country.
We have and we will.
It would be great because it's going to talk about contracts that are going to be available through state agencies and how to get parts of those contracts, whether it's construction, the services as well as commodities, and also the certification. I know that Ken will have people there to talk, and there will be a mentoring program and things like that. So
excellent.
I really want to promote that here today also.
I think part of it in the past is that many may have looked at it and said, oh, it's too complicated, I don't think I'll get a return on it. And they don't realize now there's more stress being put on it, and it's therefore a greater business opportunity that maybe justifies getting involved.
Yes, it does. And I guess on behalf of the Secretary and all of my colleagues here, I want to thank you very much. Matt did say we enjoyed the tour. We enjoyed everything that you demonstrated to us, and you did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you very much.